Hi, in this next exercise, I want to show you how to make your data interdependent. So in the previous exercise, we created a little drop-down list for our product. So you could pick your product from the list and then it would automatically go to a lookup, which looked up the correct price. In this one, I want to do it slightly differently. I've got a country column and a region column. And I have 3 different countries. And if I go to this regions tab at the bottom, my 3 different countries are France, Germany, and the UK. Within each country, I have 3 different stores, and I've very conveniently made everything have a one-word name deliberately, because we're going to use something called named ranges, and named ranges don't like spaces. So if I didn't have that, I would have to put an underscore in. So if you want to use New York, for example, you can, but you would have to have new underscore York, if you see what I mean, for the named range to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the named range up for all of these. Now you can do them individually in sections like this, and if you had different numbers of cities for each country, I would advise you to do it that way. But as we've conveniently got 3 options for everything, I can just highlight this whole table, and underneath the formulas tab there is a whole section over here about named ranges, and there's an option called create from selection, which is basically saying create a named range from the area that I've got highlighted. And if I choose create from selection, it's guessing the text that I want to use for my named range. It's saying, is it in the top row or is it in the left column? I don't want the left column one, I just want the top row. So the first section is going to be called country, that's going to be called France, that's going to be called Germany, and so on. So if I say OK to that, you'll see it's done them all at once. So if I choose from my drop down list country, it's selecting the country selections. If I choose France, it chooses my 3 French cities. If I choose Germany, it chooses my 3 German cities, and so on. So now when I go back to my cake sales data, I can set up this column so that instead of people typing in the country manually and potentially making a spelling error or putting an extra space in or something that will affect my pivot table or my pivot chart data, they'll be able to pick it automatically from a list. And I'm just going to select the whole column and go to data and this little guy here, which is called data validation. And then I want to change where it says any value to list. And the source of my list is going to be the name range called country. And what I would suggest you do is when you get to this little source box, rather than typing it in, you can press F3, or on some keyboards it will be function F3, and that will bring you up a list of all your named ranges. And I'm going to choose the one called country, and it should just come up and say equals country, and that's exactly the same as the one that we did on product on previous exercises. So now when somebody goes to type in a country, they don't have to type it manually, they can just pick it from the list. Now it's the region one that's going to be slightly different, because I could have one big list of all the different cities, but then I risk somebody choosing Germany and choosing region Paris. So I need to make sure that they only get the options that are applicable to the country that they've chosen in the previous column. So I'm going to go to the region column, select all that column, go back to my data validation and set it to list. But this time, the source of my list is a function called INDIRECT, and you'll have to type this in. I don't think there's a cleverer way of doing this. I'm going to type in equals INDIRECT, and in the brackets is the cell that is the top cell of the column that you're looking for. So in my case, it's going to be F1. And then when I choose OK, if I choose my region where I've chosen Germany, I get Berlin, Hamburg, or Frankfurt. If I choose it where I've chosen France, I get Paris, Lyon, or Lille. And if I choose it where I've chosen UK, I get Cardiff, Edinburgh, or London. And that will definitely help you when you're starting to do things like pivot table reports or pivot charts to make sure that your data has been identically typed is don't give people the option to type it in, basically make them pick from lists as much as possible. The other thing that we could do whilst we're here is restrict the date column so that only valid dates are allowable, because one of the things that causes headaches with pivot tables is if somebody's typed in a date with a full stop or a space or something instead of a forward slash, Excel doesn't like it and it stops the whole column from functioning correctly. And sometimes you get an issue with American dates because they like to have month, day, year, and UK dates are normally day, month, year, so sometimes it doesn't anticipate the dates properly. So again, whilst we're on the subject of data validation, we'll fix that issue. If you select the date column here, when I go to data validation, there is an option to say it must be a date, and then that wouldn't permit them to put in something that had a full stop in it or a space in it or something that Excel doesn't understand. But it also means you can put a range of allowable dates in. So I could say, well, I know that this is 2026 data, so I don't want people to put in historical data. So I'm going to say the start date is the 1st of the 1st, 2026. And I could say, well, nobody's going to put in an order that was ordered, that's going to be ordered in the future. There's a function called today, which is basically equals today, and then an open bracket and then a close bracket. And what it means is, because I'm recording this on the 26th of June, it means I won't be able to put in a date that's after the 26th of June. But when I open this spreadsheet tomorrow, I'll be able to put the 27th of June. And when I open it the day after, I'll be able to put the 28th of June and so on. So let's just test that and make sure that works. So if I put in the 1st of the 1st, 2026, that's within the range that I've specified, so it doesn't complain. But let's say I try and put the 1st of the 1st, 2025. It's going to come up with this strange data validation error, saying the value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. It's not really very clear, I don't think. And sometimes you can kind of get into a circle where you keep retrying it, it keeps giving you the error. So actually the only way to get out of it is to press your escape key. So what I'm going to do is go back into that data validation option, and there's an option at the back called error alert. And I probably want to leave it to this option called stop, because that's restricting them to put them into the correct dates. But I might put a more friendly error message in. So I'll say, I don't know, date error or something. Whatever you put in this top line is basically what comes up on the top of the error message. And then I'll say, please choose cancel, type, and then enter a date between the 1st of the 1st, 2026 and the current date. And just in case they're getting the error because they're putting a space in or a full stop or something, I'll say use the format dd/mm/YYYY. And then when I say OK, let me try that again. So if I try to put in the 1st of the 1st, 2025 now, it's still giving me an error message, but it's a more sensible error message that hopefully somebody will understand. Please choose cancel and then enter a date between blah, blah, blah. So then they know to put in a sensible date. Now, that's all we're going to do for the moment. I know I've slightly digressed off the subject of pivot tables, but I really wanted to talk to you about restricting your data to make sure that your data is accurate before you go off and do your pivot tables. Follow for more. We're going to do some slightly fancier pivot tables in the next episode.